The new year is already upon us, and that can mean only one thing. Well, I suppose it means a bunch of things, but the most relevant of those things is that I'm starting a new video series. And fitting for a new chapter in time, this series is going to focus on chapters. Their purpose, how to structure them, length, all those sorts of questions. This is really a discussion about novel structure, as how you break a novel into chapters has a big impact on how the story flows and how the reader moves through it. And depending on how well you do this, chapters also affect how much a reader will enjoy your book. If you've written an entire draft, or are outlining a draft, or revising a draft, you might have found the prospect of dividing that work into chapters to be either overwhelming or confusing. The first step in this process is to understand the purpose of chapters and why novels are so commonly divided into multiple chapters. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So, why are chapters a thing? What purpose do they serve? Well, very few people are willing to sit through an entire novel in one sitting. Most people are going to need to go to the bathroom or feed the cat or resume work on their giant space laser. So having a spot that makes logical sense and gives the reader a natural break makes a lot of sense. Another reason, although this is just speculation on my part, that we divide stories into chapters is likely because back in the day, a lot of books were initially published in a serialized form. Some stories are also very serialized in nature. Again, this is very likely due to original publication in a magazine, but even works that are published and distributed in their entirety can often be very serial in nature, which again lends itself to division into chapters. But I would say all those reasons are secondary to the first one that I mentioned, giving the reader a break and a natural stopping point in order to make a longer work easier to read. This brings to light one of the crucial elements about chapters that we'll discuss in more detail in later videos. If the reader is going to put the book down, you want to be sure to give them a reason to pick it back up again. And this point also illuminates another purpose of chapters: to control and manage the pacing of a story. By having breaks in the story, you will also have breaks in the action and tension. Depending on how you structure those breaks, like at what point in the action they happen, a chapter break can either serve to build or relieve tension. If a chapter breaks immediately after a climactic moment, then that will help to relieve the overall tension and emotional intensity of the story. If it breaks before the resolution of a climactic moment, then it will work to add tension by delaying that resolution of that climactic moment. That kind of situation is usually referred to as a cliffhanger, whether or not it actually involves hanging from a cliff. Placing breaks strategically can help you to lower or raise the intensity of your story as desired. Since most readers are going to stop at a chapter break anyway, making them coincide with specific moments around pacing makes a lot of sense, while also potentially giving the reader a reason to come back to the story. Other sort of narrative reasons that are supported by chapters include time skips and location or viewpoint changes. Now, I should probably take a moment to point out that a chapter does not always correlate one-to-one with a scene. Every time you end and enter a new scene, you don't necessarily have to move to a new chapter. In fact, I would say dividing every scene into a separate chapter is kind of rare, at least in my experience. Now, that being said, if you're moving to a very different location in the setting, or if the next scene jumps ahead in time, that's a much larger break than a typical viewpoint or small setting change, and having those scenes happen at a chapter break is a good idea. Chapter breaks provide a much more definitive stopping point and make it less likely that the reader is going to be jarred by your time skip or location change. That doesn't mean that location changes or time skips still won't be jarring. It's just a little bit easier for the reader to digest those if they happen at the beginning of a new chapter rather than just at a scene break in the middle of a chapter. Chapters also support certain literary devices like epigraphs, which in a literary context refer to short quotes or paragraphs that preface each chapter in a book. Well, I guess they don't have to preface a chapter. Sometimes they preface the entire book, but I'm talking about chapters here, so I'm going to talk about epigraphs in context of chapters. Epigraphs serve a variety of purposes, but obviously if you're placing one at the start of every chapter, then you need a chapter break before you can insert an epigraph at the start of a new chapter. So when you boil it right down, chapters are just a tool to manage the delivery of a story. The same way that pacing and mixing exposition with action and introspection help you make scenes move either faster or slower, chapters work to make the overall structure of a story speed up and slow down as required. They also make longer work more manageable for a reader, and when used properly can help with the flow of a story and enhance reader engagement. So hopefully that helps illuminate some of the purposes around chapters and why books are so commonly divided into chapters. This is kind of one of those things that I don't think a lot of people think about. It's just kind of something that everybody does, and I'm not sure that everybody has really thought about why. In upcoming parts of the series, we'll talk about how to structure a chapter, or the different ways that you can structure a chapter. We'll also discuss how long a chapter should be, and also talk a bit more about related concepts like parts, movements, scenes, and stuff like that. Those things are all related to chapters and have some different interactions with, and they're all considerations that you need to make when you're laying out. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this video and found the advice in it useful. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can check out all my other writing advice related videos and subscribe to my channel. I post new videos every Wednesday, usually. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Voice kind of cracked the first time I said that.